So let's get started by throwing some oil into a large pot over medium-high heat. I've got about 500 grams of beef here. This has already been cut into cubes. You can go smaller or larger depending on your preference, but this is fine for me. Let's go ahead and brown that meat, throw it into the pot, and sear it on both sides. Once it's seared, we can season with some salt and some freshly ground black pepper. Next up, I'm going to dice up about 1 kilo of onions. This will give me a good opportunity to test out different dicing methods. I'm going to start out using the polar slicing method. It's a bit messy, things sort of get all over the place. Next up, I'll try a radial cut. Much better, everything kind of holds together, making it a lot easier to manage. So we're going to toss in 1/4 of those onions right now. Go ahead and saute them until they wilt a little bit and turn translucent. Then we'll add in 1 cup of water. Bring that to a boil and then let it reduce until there's nothing left. Next, I'm going to cube up 1 kilo of tomatoes. That ends up being about 4 for me. You can go pretty rough on these, no need for a small dice, because they're going to break down as they stew. Next, I need 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. That's about 30 milliliters. Give that all a good mix. And I'm going to cover it up for about 10 minutes until those tomatoes start breaking down. Next, I'm going to add 1.5 liters of water. Bring that up to a boil. Now I'm going to add in some dried locust beans. They're called sumbala, or dawa dawa, or iru. And this is a West African flavoring component that is used to add some really rich, funky umami kind of notes, similar to what you get from dried shrimp. I need about 2 tablespoons of this. And these guys are dried, so once we dump them in, they'll rehydrate in the soup and lend a really unique flavor. Next, I'm going to chop some carrots. Feel free to dice these as well, so they blend a little bit better into the stew. And I'm going to dice up 2 green bell peppers. Next up, I've got a Japanese eggplant here. Ideally you'd use an African eggplant, but we don't get those around here, so this should work nicely. Next up, I've got 3 habanero chilies. You can use any sort of chili pepper you want. This is just for slice. I'm not going to slice those open because the amount of time that we'll be stewing this, they will release their spice quite well. Let's add in the rest of our onions. And if you're like me, you may have to remove some of the broth at this point or transfer it to a bigger pot. Now let's reduce the heat to a simmer and let that go until the sauce thickens and the beef is tender. There's so much going on in this that it's hard to pin down what's going on. So many layers of complexity. The first thing that's really striking me is the just deep, rich umami from that sumbala, as well as the chili oil effect that I'm getting from the chili peppers. that just kind of coats your tongue in a nice baseline spice. My tongue may be broken at this point, so it may be obscenely spicy to others, but it's hard for me to tell. I've probably destroyed my taste buds. Behind everything, you get this sort of robust base note from the onions that have been slow cooking, with these little accents of brightness from all the different vegetables that are in there. Creates a really well-balanced sauce. And I'd recommend that you try this on rice, or pasta, or on its own. See you next time. Cheers.